Are you familiar with Open Dime?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's an old school.
I still have some originals here.
It's like the rip pack. Yeah.
The idea is you put Bitcoin on it and you can just give it away, and that person can give it away. It's basically cash. Imagine if you can do that digitally with software. Instead of having to trade or send and receive via transactions all the time on these blockchains, what if we just securely and ideally in a decentralized way and trustlessly pass around the wallets themselves? I'm like, the key to that would be to never know the private key. So can we generate private keys with basically in a trustless way where it's guaranteed that we or the software doesn't store it, doesn't know it, never sees it, but it's used and made available to the person that decides to, like Shannon used to say, crack the piggy bank. It was really based on an entirely software version, decentralized version of Open Dime.
Another fun episode, and this one I've been waiting for about 6 months now since I first learned who Sull was. I'll give a bunch of the listeners a little bit of background because this is actually the first time that I've been able to talk with Sull outside of random Twitter spaces for 5 and 10 minutes here. I got hired at Emblem Vault, or started working at Emblem Vault November 1st, 2022. And I'd say within maybe a month or two, I was hosting a space, and all of a sudden, I was getting pinged like crazy from the Telegram Covalt group, which is kind of the early Emblem Vault community. And they kept saying, Sull's in the crowd, Sull's in the crowd. And I was like, I don't know what a Sull is. What's a Sull? And they're like, no, Sull, the co-founder of Emblem Vault. And I was like, what? There's another co-founder? I don't know, there was another co-founder. And then ever since then, I see you everywhere. And it's one of the reasons outside of, kind of learning the history about EV and yourself is that you propose a lot of very intricate ideas. And since you are a co-founder at Emblem or the early team, you've been around the space for a while and you've seen pretty much the entire rise of this space. And some of the ideas that you've introduced, or even some of the old school Bitcoin talk forums and websites that you've posted, a lot of those ideas are like actually reality now. So, we could call you maybe like a Bitcoin philosopher of essence, but maybe not a maxi, right? Or maybe so, which we'll dive into. As Sull has the Hal Finney picture in the back that he said was from Crypto Graffiti back in the day, who's a very early Bitcoin artist, not doing art on Bitcoin, but doing art about Bitcoin. Different times. So Sull, man, dude, like I said, the room you got set up, absolute zen. I wish I had a spot like that. Thanks for coming on, man. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks for the invite.
It's been quite some time, and it seems like your hands are now quite full, spreading across a lot of different ideas of the ordinal space that is very chaotic and seems like there's something new every day. But we'll start right back at the beginning, because I'm just interested first and foremost about your history, and then we can dive into kind of ordinals and everything. Then, early co-founder at Emblem, were you in crypto beforehand? How did you find yourself into this kooky space at such an early time in its infancy?
Yeah, okay, so I guess we can go all the way back like everybody does. Been in crypto since, there's a technically when you started or when you heard about it, and then there's like when you started to.
I would just say when did you go down that rabbit hole and never come back?
Yeah, so that was so I first heard about it right away because I was already kind of interested in working in the microtransaction kind of area of the internet and how to move money cheaply, where credit cards are always like, the minimum fee is like 25 cents or whatnot. And how do we move pennies around, so, and that interest of mine was because I was involved early days in what was called a video blogging community, which in some ways is very much like what we're going through now. It was like revolutionary video on the internet. This is before YouTube. So I worked on stuff for that. Like basically RSS related for video and podcasting type stuff. I was involved with groups, and I was involved in video blogging community, which was like a Yahoo group. And I created a directory of video blogs, and then I went into how to help video bloggers sustain themselves and get paid easily. And that's kind of when I started to really focus on internet money, really. And this is 2006. So I came up with the term crowdfunding. It's like one of my asterisks of like,
It's a
I'm the
big
guy
term to hold,
like,
dude.
I'm the guy that used that term first and wrote like the Wikipedia article and tried to frame a concept around fundraising, but for people that will randomly and suddenly gather and then dissipate, but to fund projects and creators. So I came up with crowdfunding, wrote about it, and had this website called Fund a Vlog, where I was trying to implement payments over the internet. So fast forward a few years, that's why I stumbled on Bitcoin very early, because it was obviously, this new latest attempt at these crypto type of things. I didn't take it too seriously like many people. But I remember using like the fountains, and I was getting like free Bitcoin from fountains back in the Andreessen, what was his name?
Gavin
Gavin Andreessen.
Andreessen. Yeah.
Yeah, he had like some fountains up. I was like, I was doing some mining and then turn it off, turn it on. But so I've known about Bitcoin. It was kind of, I didn't treat it as anything serious. Like it wouldn't go to anything. It was just some cipher experimental stuff, but it was fun. But I dove deep in really not too long before Counterparty. I was working with um, Adam Levine.
Yep, I've had him on
Um,
here. He's a past guest.
yeah, so I was like addicted to his podcast, Let's Talk Bitcoin. Like I was commuting to work, and like it's the most exciting part when they released a new a podcast episode. It was just so great. And the intro music, man, I was just so hooked. And really that's when I started to get hooked on Bitcoin. And I ended up working with him. I built like his first Let's Talk Bitcoin website, implemented some tipping features and things, and went to the first Bitcoin conferences and things like that. But Counterparty was really when I was like, okay, tokens.
Tokens on Bitcoin too.
Yeah, and even before that, colored coins and other protocols, I was talking to people who were proposing these things. Mastercoin. I talked to the dude. I don't even remember his name at this point, but like, yeah. So I was just all about, okay, what can we do with Bitcoin beyond this money thing? And that's what really triggered a lot of the creativity that I experimented with over the years was colored coins and Counterparty.
There's a lot of history around Adam's podcast. There's a lot of, we'll call them now influential figures who have come from that community, and a lot of unique concepts that people are still attempting to, try to implement, things from tokenizing your podcast to token gating music, right? A lot of those have now kind of moved over to Ethereum. And I've had some subpar success in a variety of ways. And now it's kind of all coming back to Bitcoin, in essence. But moving into the early Counterparty days, it was founded in 2014, and this will be good for all of those who are new to Ordinals to listen to kind of understand the early Counterparty days and those figures. I've had a lot of those past members on, from Joe to you, right, to J-Dog, to all of those early Rare Pepes and devs and stuff from that space.
Great interviews. So
Hey, thank you. What was your first attempt at a project, or at least from intricate ideas? Like I said, I tried to, before this podcast, try to find some of those past tweets and some of those past Bitcoin Talk forums, but it seemed like you'd introduced a lot of unique ideas at the time, whether you actually built on them or not. They became something now that exists.
yeah, it's actually how I met Shannon, to be honest with you. Those early Counterparty days, we met through that community on Skype. This is back when we were able to talk to Vitalik Buterin and Skype channels, but Shannon seemed interesting to me, and I don't remember if I reached out or if he reached out, but and J Dog too was in the mix. All these guys. So Shannon and I hit it off really quick. Like our brains were just like, I think both crazy enough to like take our crazy ideas semi seriously and try to run with a few of them. So we tried various things, but my actual first project that I decided to dedicate myself to with Counterparty was called Crypto Verbs. It was called Crypto Verbs because all the tokens I was creating were verbs, were actions, and with things like Spells of Genesis and other experiments in Counterparty that were kind of games or different types of applications. My idea was to introduce a pool of tokens that were meant to be used for anything that would be considered an action in that game or that application. So that's why they were called crypto verbs. I spent about 8 months, largely with Shannon, but not, Shannon was also doing other things, but definitely he was like my right hand man companion for just figuring stuff out and shooting around ideas. And I went as far as like, oh man, we did some crazy stuff. Like we were experimenting with all sorts of software that was coming out and that was already out with like community currencies and stuff, trying to like convert a community currency software system. I don't know if you're familiar with like community currencies, but like and like make it crypto and stuff and all sorts of things.
That'd be
Now,
like
even
it'd be
back
like
then, like
yeah, it'd be like the equivalent of like social tokens today, which is still kind of in its infancy,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah. Because you can create your own money in
Mhm.
certain local communities. So which is a parallel universe, believe it or not. But we were like, so there was some software built for that, like banking software, but for community currencies. So we were like trying to adapt that, and we created some crazy APIs and things. But really, crypto verbs was a big idea, like way too big. It was incorporating so many things. Um, and it even touched on memes and NFTs and things. So this is 2014. In hindsight, I really should have put something legit out there, just so for the historical value now, because really what it turned out to be was a shelved, unlaunched, early NFT-esque token related platform and project. Um, I have a very pragmatic side. I'm very conservative, and I was watching the legal matters of the time and the SEC and as opposed to many people who just didn't care and did their crowd sales, they were called back then. This is before ICOs even. I got to the end of where I was going to launch a crowd sale, had this whole tokenomics stuff worked out and everything. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to get sued. I think I might get sued. And I was like trying to figure out how to distribute tokens legally, like skirt around the gray area laws. So I created merchandise, stickers, and T-shirts and things. And what I was doing was I had like an e-commerce type of widget thing. So if you buy stickers, you also get tokens with it. So like people are actually buying the stickers, not the tokens. The tokens are just like receipts in a way. But those are the types of things I was trying to figure out on how to be safe and do it.
It's
But
kind of it's kind of
yeah,
it's
I
kind
I
of
didn't release it.
yeah, it's kind of ironic actually. Pudgy Penguins just did something similar where they sold the Pudgy Penguins NFT collection. It's a popular one on ETH. They just
Yeah.
launched their Amazon sale where they're selling plushies and they actually come with NFTs, right? So
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
it's like a point system that comes with it. And
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
actually the opposite take of what was happening kind of in 2014 and 15, where people were trying to tokenize real world assets, right? It's like you buy this, I think SIBA was the first one where it's like you buy SIBA and you get like a Bitcoin miner that comes with it, the
Oh
token.
yeah. It's going
And
back.
a lot of Umbrella is one of them. There was like a handful of those like historical NFTs that kind of existed around at that time.
I also made physical cards. And like I was inspired by like Starbucks cards. Like they're so nice. And I was like, well, we gotta make these crypto verb cards because I had this kind of cool logo of a rabbit and stuff. I wanted that plus the verb itself, like actionize the logo or have the community contribute artwork for them and vote on them, and they make physical cards and sell it. There's all sorts of crazy things. But yeah, in the end, I didn't launch it because I was just too nervous about if it did take off, it would have drew a lot of attention, and it was just too murky and the too much gray area. Even today, right? All these years later.
As I say,
But,
doesn't it feel ludicrous where we're in a current environment where individuals are intentionally and publicly pumping tokens and having money sent to their ETH addresses, and
Even me.
8-9 years ago, you're fearful that you might get put in jail. Although back then there were some people getting put in jail that were getting tricked by the FBI to sell Bitcoin illegally in some essence.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I didn't launch it. I put it in the back burner to revisit, and then actually later on when I worked with Shannon again, we experimented with introducing some of those ideas into Koval. So like we had Koval Verb and Koval Packs, and like if you do the Internet Archive and look at the original website for Koval, you'll see like a lot of it was pulled from Crypto Verb's ideas.
Interesting. Yeah. So the history of Koval, for those that don't know, it actually started out as Ribbit Rewards. Shannon acquired the token, converted it to Koval C, which was moved to Counterparty, and then it moved to Ethereum in 2019 or 2020. But the original idea of Emblem Vault was introduced in, I think it was like late 2016 on a Bitcoin Talk forum. But of course, there has to be a lot of thought that's put behind it beforehand, as you'd mentioned. Take us through the story. So I've never heard the story from your point of view. As you know, if you look at your bio, it says co-founder of Emblem.
I co-opted it finally because it took off. So hey man, if anyone is allowed to do that,
take us through the story. So when you met Shannon, like how was that idea introduced? And like what kind of problems were you trying to solve back in 2015-16 that conceived the idea of Emblem Vault?
Yeah, so Shannon and I worked together at Ribbit Rewards, which was rebranded to Loyal. So we knew each other before, and then we worked together at that startup company. It was loyalty points in the blockchain. And, after some time, they didn't want the cryptocurrency anymore, the company. It was too much of a, liability, basically. So they offered that Shannon offered to take it over and kind of do this little side project and kind of nurture it. He adopted this cryptocurrency because you can't really kill cryptocurrencies, and there are people owned it, and so something had to be done. So the CEO was like, "Yeah, take it, it's yours." But yeah, I mean, being that we were close and just extending from our prior experiments, I was like, "Oh, cool, man. What are you going to do with this thing?" And the more we talked, the more I got involved, and I went through one or two iterations, and then I decided he did like a name contest. I'm like, how about the Circuits of Value, Koval? And I guess that ended up winning, obviously. So yeah, it was just a lot of different ideas on how to make that cryptocurrency useful. Do something with it. We adopted it. I was kind of like pretty deep in it with him. But some time went by, and we, like I said, some ideas were pulled from crypto verbs and went through that phase. But then I asked Shannon one day, like, what do you think of the idea of taking are you familiar with Open Dime?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, actually,
that's an old school. Yeah, that was getting shilled. That was when I got into the space in 2016. It was getting shilled like in, I think, 2017 or 18.
Yeah, it's a little hardware USB. I still have some originals here.
It's like the RIP pack. Yeah.
But the idea is you put Bitcoin on it and you can just give it away, and that person can give it away. It's basically cash. And I was like, imagine if you can do that digitally with software. Like, instead of having to trade or send and receive via transactions all the time on these blockchains, what if we just securely and ideally in a decentralized way and trustlessly pass around the wallets themselves? I'm like, the key to that would be to never know the private key. So can we generate private keys with basically in a trustless way where it's guaranteed that we or the software doesn't store it, doesn't know it, never sees it, but it's used and made available to the person that decides to, like Shannon used to say, crack the piggy bank. Um, so it was really based on how to make an OpenDime, an entirely software version, decentralized version of OpenDime. And then it kind of just moved into like, well, we can put peer-to-peer files in this. We can use any blockchain, any cryptocurrency can be inside this wallet. So it's a wallet of wallets that you can kind of pass around, and it can be done on the side of the chains. We're using peer-to-peer networks. A lot of it was peer-to-peer focused, trying to use something that was called DAT back then, which is now hyperdrive and forget there's a new umbrella. It changed names a lot, but it's pretty it's actually that technology is being used quite a bit these days. So it was legit technology that we spotted and we worked with from the beginning. And now it's actually definitely a legit peer-to-peer technology. So it was a good choice. I'm not sure if you guys are still using it in any ways, but I don't think so. Maybe you are. But yeah, it was basically just how to send private keys, securely and trustlessly and without any central authority involved.
And so were you involved in the building process, or did you? And if you were, at what point did you decide to step away? Was it because you saw something else, some other new shiny toy, didn't have faith, or like with some other ulterior reason?
Yeah, I mean, there was a variety of reasons. Really, I guess the easy answer is I was not seeing a way with the technology available to do this in a purely decentralized way, which was my vision. I can be a very purist when it comes to these things. Also, once again, the conservative nature of legal liabilities. I said if this ever does take off, and there's some millions of dollars kind of being transacted and being held in our little emblem vaults that we came up with. If something goes wrong, if it's hacked, we're going to get sued. So again, I was like a little nervous about that. Yeah, there's some other things, obviously I guess I have a history of taking things to a point and then kind of moving on to something else a little bit. So, but yeah, I stuck with it for a while. I did do some of the dev prototyping, a lot of like the architecting of it, came up with the name Emblem Vault and Koval and all that stuff, branding, the website, worked with the peer-to-peer tech. And it was a collaboration. I mean, Shannon's the real genius coder beyond me. So I'm good enough to be dangerous, or if I really focus and take my time, I can pretty much bang out anything. But like he'll just like do something in 2 days. Like, oh, that would have taken me a month. So he's amazing, and so yeah, I mean, it went through a lot of iterations, and then I left. I mean, they were down North Carolina, and he has a team and his wife at the time and stuff. And I was still in New York, so I was kind of feeling like a little disconnected in things, and for the legal reasons and not being decentralized, we're just like, you know what? I think I'm gonna move on. Didn't know if he was going to stick with it for years and years and years after that, but he did, and here we are. Now it's become one of the most useful tools in the space.
It's the crypto Swiss Army knife that you guys, conceived. That's kind of how I view it, and it's gone through so many iterations. Adam McBride and I had gone through probably 2 to 3 months of negotiations with the team before everything had before the contract and everything and deal had been finalized. And as I like to research things, this kind of citicism journalism, going through the past history of Emblem, and you go through that Bitcoin Talk forum. You go through him and the X Teams Medium posts from like 2018 through 2021 and seeing all the different iterations of it. It's tough to keep something alive in this space where technology and teams consistently surface and then leave with the money maybe a few months later. So you can call it literally one of the OG projects, but it was really ahead of its time in terms of the technological capabilities, right? It's now where the space sits today with smart contracts, the things that you guys had thought of, it makes it much easier to implement than when it was on Bitcoin. And now we're seeing some new technologies pop up that could, be compatible with it. Things like, like DLCs and things like that some of these ordinal projects are using. And now we even see, super funny, we had talked about this on Twitter, ERC6551, where they're giving tokens wallets, which is essentially what Emblem Vault is.
Yeah,
the difference is that that's a protocol, ours is a product. So we have a little bit more flexibility and social capital that comes with it and all those different things. But when Adam and I were going around trying to build this like historical NFT marketplace, and we talked with Emblem, the idea of vaulting as a service in crypto to me is like this multi-billion-dollar industry. And the fact that was just sitting there, and I was like, I still to this day don't understand how nobody else has really attempted it. It's probably because it's freaking complicated to do. And
complicated, yeah.
Very complicated. There's so much stuff happening on the back end, but I am starting to see more products mention like some sort of vaulting standard that they do. It's definitely not as intricate as Emblem, but starting to see that idea trickle out a little bit more, right? So for you, it's like a little bit fulfilling saying like, you were right, at least. Of course, still not with the product, but right, the idea was very on tune with where we're going.
Yeah.
And I do think vaulting as a service is going to be like a literally multi-billion-dollar industry in the crypto space, whether Emblem capitalizes on all of it or whether other competitors pop up and surface. But moving past Emblem, did you then take a break from crypto and then kind of come back? Because I'm telling you, it felt like you just surfaced, dude. The old school Koval community, and they're probably listening to this, the ones that hang out on Telegram, they were super big on you, super, super fond when you'd popped up into that spaces.
That's funny to hear. Cool. I mean, I wasn't always I was reluctant about even putting one of those announcement threads on Bitcoin Talk. I was averse to like doing an ICO. I was averse to letting community members do too much of like the branding. And I guess part of me, like that Steve Jobs part, like I wanted control of like how everything looked, and then I didn't want all this crazy. I wanted the chat. I didn't want to use Discord. I wanted to use Matrix. So I mean, I probably annoyed a lot of the community members with some of my my stances and things. But Shannon was there to kind of keep the balance, and but yeah, I mean, it was cool. I'm glad people remembered me. I did do a lot of work on it and did a lot of the conceiving of the ideas, and it just, in the end, it wasn't something that I could stick with. And then historical NFTs, right? Use cases started to come to Emblem, and I started to see Emblem popping up more and more. I'm like, oh, how funny is that? And like my friend Amina was like, that Emblem Vault thing you told me about, I'm seeing it everywhere. So I was like, and she's like, you got to get in there. You got to tell them, like, you're a part of it. And I'm like, nah, it's fine. It's cool. Let them. I'm good. It's good to see that they're getting some traction finally. And she's always harassing me. Like,
I'm glad.
You got to get in there. And this guy, Jake, he's awesome. And like, so, I mean, eventually I started to dip in to see what's up,
and now you're sucked back in. Now you've been pulled back in. Some of your ideas, that you'd been theorizing are now playing to the surface. You'd spoken, said that you had theorized something similar to ordinals back in the day, or something about, I saw a tweet about that a little while ago. What were your first thoughts when you came back and saw ordinals, right? Everybody's building back on Bitcoin. All the builders had left probably around 2017, 2018 to go dabble on DeFi as the Bitcoin culture kind of capitulated into this like maximalist kind of our way or the highway type take. And now it's kind of being commandeered a little bit, and the internet or the communities across other blockchains are trying to take it back and use it for things that are not just money, right? Storage, and we're seeing new use cases. But from your perspective, is this, first, is it rewarding or fulfilling to see Bitcoin kind of being revitalized? And then, just your take on ordinals in general.
Yeah, I mean, I did take that break because of ICOs and scams and frauds. And when I wasn't able to tell friends about crypto without being embarrassed, like, oh, that's that whole scammy industry, I was like, I need to take a break. So I did step away, and I did dabble as like a little side project thing in this blockchain called Ravencoin for like maybe 6 months. I built some tooling for that when it was launched, just because I was getting bored. But I didn't make a big splash of any of that, and I kind of left it because it just didn't. I didn't think it was going to have much success. I forget why. Just I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So I did come back in like January. I started hearing about ordinals. I was told about it. I'm like, what's this now? You know, I was already poking around a little bit, you know, with the Emblem Vault and kind of just looking at what's happening. I was starting to play around with some of my own ideas. I'd poke into counterparties, Telegram. You know, I missed out on the whole rare Pepe thing, except for someone actually John Viller gave me. I was like, I don't get this, man. So, but I would poke in. I'd be around every now and then. But I didn't jump in the rare Pepe thing too much. I almost made a couple, but didn't do it. So I was poking around, but I was gone, and then I came back because of ordinals. First I was skeptical. I'm like, what the hell is this, man? This fake serial number thing. But then I was thinking, like, you know, I had this idea. It's true, and I was actually working with Shannon again. This was during that startup company. They were like, in case we need to pivot, we need some ideas. We want to patent ideas. You know, you guys are the crazy ones. Come up with some ideas. So I did come up with a version of ordinals that was for giving atomic unit of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency serial numbers, so we can actually track them. I called it token traversal tracking. And I made a diagram. I did some writing on it a little bit, and I was like, here you go. What do you think of this? So the idea was a little bit different. It was the serial numbers weren't generated in the elegant way of the first in, first out from Genesis to the end. It was it relied on on-chain registries, and coins would have to go to this address, kind of like a smart contract address. Serial numbers would get assigned at that point. So there'd be like different kind of parallel serial numbers, serializations happening, but all unique. And then from there, it would have been kind of like a first in, first out where you track the movements. Crazy fucking idea, right? Like, I'm like, you know, I'm giving it to you just because you told me to come up with some ideas, but I'm not like going to be talking about this. I don't want to get laughed at. Like, I felt the same way about Emblem Vault, you know, too. Like, you know, this is a laughable idea. It's too crazy. You know, what do you mean sending the actual wallets around? What do you mean sending tokens that have serial numbers? These things, they're not primitives. They don't, you can't do this. But this is kind of where my brain goes with a lot of things. So that's why the more I understood what Casey came up with, I'm like, oh, this guy is like my kind of guy. And I did fall in love with the ordinal theory part. And then since then, in the inscription part, I've always kind of been conservative with block space, using the block space. Like, I liked storing stuff on it, but I like to be responsible about it. So I was concerned about like what was being put on Bitcoin through ordinals. I'm like, this sucks. This is like, you know, thick butts and all these things. I'm like, come on, man, this could be something really cool, but you guys are ruining it. But now, you know, I understand why, you know, getting in there first and all that. And I'm hoping to see better art enter the space. And then the inscription number thing, I was like, fuck that, you know, I'm not, you know, come on, the inscription number doesn't exist. But yeah, the serial numbers don't exist either. it's all a shared hallucination, as they like to.
It's all a meme. It's all a meme. So it's all.
So yeah, whenever I have a little resistance, I have to remember, well, I believe in serial numbers. So, but yeah, I generally, and then BRC, I was like a vocal critic against BRC because it was, as we all know, like all the complaints that we've been talking about. And now I'm like, well, when the market talks, you got to listen. It's out there. It's adopted. It's a thing. So now, yeah. So I mean, I'm a flexible guy. I'm pragmatic, but like if I don't like something, I can still latch onto it and try to improve it. Like I have that BRC 21 extension protocol idea. I've talked to Domo, about like I know you want to keep it simple. I agree with that. So what do you think of like an extension protocol? So we've chatted. I've gone from a vocal critic to trying to work with him and put some stuff out there to make improvements. That's how I roll. So
I actually I had this conversation. I think it was yesterday, and you were in it. I'm actually quite bullish on this idea of like extensions versus just complete changes in terms of all the standards that are popping up between what is it? I did a thread earlier, like ORC and BRC and 721. This idea, I talked with Domo about it too. You want to keep the simplicity because that's a strong foundation. That's the same ideas that Bitcoin is built on. Have a simple model that rarely changes and needs a high percentage of consensus for it to change. And when I spoke with Domo, it was the same thing. He wants to keep the three functions, which is deployment, transfer. And then you can let other people, use those indexers that are governing that kind of protocol to then go build other functions on top of it, right? If you want to go add other things outside of those three of deployment, transfer, then you could kind of build like a second indexer on top of it and kind of build within your walled garden until other people adopt it. Is that what you're thinking about? Is that how you think about BRC 21, or is there something else to this meta, or I guess standard extension?
Yeah, I mean, my approach was to totally respect what the market is using, not do like a whole new namespace for tickers. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. It's entirely meant to work alongside BRC 20, so people can get anything from a simple logo, which everybody asks for, to more interesting things. And I haven't really touched this in a while. It was just something I did, in the 2 or 3 hours of kind of just throwing out some ideas. Some of it's off the cuff, some of it just seemed like smart stuff or what other people were asking for. But yeah, it's not meant to disrupt BRC 20. It was meant to be something that we can use either partially or wholly as an opt-in system from indexers and marketplaces. If they want to pull in some of the key values, they can. They're there. It's a standard that could be living out there alongside BRC 20. It could also be a standalone. And to be honest with you, I've been thinking about, I'm probably going to try it, a standalone version that's also considered an extension. However, I would do it responsibly. So like I would exclude in the protocol all 4 character tickers. So there's no like, oh, there's another meme, there's another Pepe. No. I hate asset name clashing issues. So a standalone version would allow for less and allow for more than 4 characters, and let and then let the extension protocol aspect take the 4 character BRC 20s and enhance those. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to try it. I'm also going to use a different envelope protocol specifier, not ORD. Actually, I think I might use ORD with a namespace, BRC 21. So yeah, in June, I think I'm going to be starting working on that, and just as a test case. So we'll see.
Yeah, I have it deployed up here, and you've also showed pre-existing token protocols, right? BRC 20, ORC 20. You've done the HALS ticker. You're doing that with the namespace, And on your website, or on your Twitter account, I should say, you have a handful of other projects that are on here. You have mtzn.xyz and then Sato Rare, the on-chain registry for sats of value. Sato Rare, I think I'm saying that right, describes the state of being understood or realized sudden unpredictable movements of enlightenment or realization related to Satori. What is this? Tell us what is an on-chain registry for sats of value?
So my biggest interest in ordinals is really the sats, to be honest with you. Like Rare Satoshi Society, Nullish. I love that guy. What he's doing and his character, it's just so refreshing to have him in the space, and he's done some brilliant stuff. So I'm also like very, very bullish on the sats, not just Casey's rarity scale, but like I think there's going to be lots of other arbitrary kind of rarity scales or scales that can express some meaning in a sat, like world events, anything from world events to personal events, not necessarily blockchain related activities. I see sats as like the ultimate kind of digital artifact to like the purest form that we can anchor anything to. And that's kind of like the gift from Casey, really, is that now that these exist, there's consensus that they exist and we can use them. So in the future, I was thinking an on-chain registry to really put the most meaningful and noteworthy sats into like sort of a directory, a registry, where they can be stored on chain and any metadata, anything that's marked up, any participatory content about the sat, kind of like what you see on blockchain info when you see like some of those transactions that actually have historical meaning. I want to do something like that for sats. And this was done a while ago. I was thinking of using Counterparty to be the registry, kind of use Counterparty as a database. And I got a couple of assets that I wanted to use, and I lay out some of the thinking. But I'm now actually thinking of literally using inscriptions to parent child to kind of. I mean, sats don't exist on chain, So I'm thinking like, well, the registry would actually put the sat on chain.
It makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense because there's also there's two cultural clashes. You have the traditionalists of Bitcoin, threatening to prune ordinal theory because they can just basically omit taproot from their nodes, which doesn't recognize anything. And then you have the other side, which is the newer class, which is using taproot to put this arbitrary data because from anything from music to SVG files to documents to images to whatever it may be. And sats is literally the foundation of that. So tracking that is quite important outside of just a numbering system, because the numbering system of ordinals is just theory. It's not on chain. So how would you build a registry like this to put, it almost sounds like meta or almost like Inception. Like you're putting the sat that isn't recognized on chain within its own blockchain. It sounds almost like a mimetic dream.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some crazy stuff, so this kind of goes along with it. But like I said, I was originally thinking of just using Counterparty. Counterparty is kind of going through some growing pains at the moment. I'm not sure where it's going to end up. I don't know if you're privy to like some of the chats, but
it sounds like a fork may be.
But I thought it would be a novel use of Counterparty to literally use Counterparty as a database, a simple database, just a simple registry where the sat number is there with some metadata that links out to an ordinal inscription. But now, I'm thinking of using entirely ordinals to. Of course, I wouldn't be that the registry wouldn't be all the sats, not 2.1 quadrillion. It would just be sats that are meaningful, whether broadly meaningful or even if people say, hey, this sat means something to me. This is the date that I got married, or this is the date that my grandfather died, or this is whatever it may be. So like I think in the future, some people are, if they want to, publicly um, put something out there and kind of tie it to the Bitcoin blockchain and find a SAT that can be associated with that, whether it's the SAT names or just the date, timestamps. Like they can pick and choose the aspects of a SAT and the transaction, the block, and these things, and they can say, I want a SAT within this range, or I want this specific SAT. And then even if they don't even necessarily have to own this SAT, like it can just be, I'm choosing this SAT to apply content to outside of the inscription envelope ordinal theory part, but like a separate on-chain registry. So it could be an unmined SAT from the future, but that SAT matches up nicely with that person's life event or whatever it may be. And others might want to put like all sorts of historical world events and have it permanently on an inscription and have a SAT associated with it in this registry, which is a different layer than like the inscription in the SAT that it's inscribed on. So I don't know. It might fly. It might be a good idea. It might not be. It was just one of my early, like, this is like 3 months old now it was my first kind of like, what do I want to do in the ordinal space?
It's crazy that 3 months can be old, right? Only in crypto,
Yeah,
3 months where it can just be, in existence. You even have out down here stamps, which is another protocol, which is Adam likes to call it like the ordinal reinforcer to prevent ordinals from being pruned, because then you have stamps kind of waiting there where it cannot be pruned ever. Are you a fan of the stamps? Are you a stamp man? You said that you are a little bit of an on-chain purist. This would be pretty much as pure today as any other protocol that exists.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a supporter of it, and I like to find a way to incorporate lots of different things into this particular project. So I did add stamps. Yeah, I'm for it, man. I'm a stamps. I have only like created a few. I made some Hal Finney stamps. Under 1,000. Did a few of those. And I thought it'd be useful. It'd be interesting to kind of incorporate stamps too. So counterparty stamps and ordinals. But we'll see. Like I said, this is kind of like in ordinal years, this is kind of like an antique already. But it's an interesting read. It's some cool ideas. So we'll see.
And you
might pick it back up.
And I believe this is your project, right? Your newest project. This is your PFP, it looks like.
Or these are called medicines.
Yeah, medicines. What is this?
So when I did jump back into the NFT space for this particular project and some other stuff a little bit in 2021 when the NFTs really started taking off. So I was back in crypto in that way. There's a blockchain called DeSo that came out, and there was like all this speculation that it was a big scam. And I was like, what the fuck is this DeSo? Or it was actually called BitClout. And, it was a big mystery. So I kind of got sucked down a rabbit hole to figure out, well, is it a scam? Is it for real? And I took the unpopular opinion that it wasn't a scam, and actually they're building something. It's going to exist. You may not like it. I don't even like it anymore, but at least I proved to myself that it was a legit like technology and it still exists. But I met the artist on that in that community, BitClout DeSo. Her name is Meredith Marcone. She's from New Zealand. She's a professional fine artist. And, we became friends, and she wanted to work with me, and she had this idea to create this new collection. So I worked with her with the branding. We called it Medicines. It was a generative thing. We sold like 500 on DeSo, 500 on Solana, and then the market crashed bad. Like pretty much it crashed when we launched on Solana, but so it took a while to even sell 500. And then it just kind of sat because she got disillusioned. I kind of got disillusioned. And the project never really came to a completion. So now I'm taking it to Bitcoin. So look out for that.
Sull is coming home with the project. I'm interested. Obviously, you theorize the idea of taking wallets, and trading them. Back in 2015, 2016. There wasn't that many blockchains. Ethereum had literally just launched in the middle of 2015. So I actually find it kind of interesting that you'd go deploy something on Solana, as being kind of this on-chain purist. What about other blockchains outside of Bitcoin entices you to go explore on it, especially something like Solana? That's definitely had its volatile up and downs, from the perception of it to the user base to it literally going down at points, turned off.
That was terrible.
What
It was terrible. That
as somebody who's, again, somebody who believes in the ethos of on-chain storage, why explore outwards outside of Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, first there's the business side of me, the business hat. Like, where is there an active community? Where's the excitement? After we finished on DSO, we were like, well, okay, it was always meant to be a multi-chain project, which actually it might have been one of the first to outwardly say we're a multi-chain project. We're going to scatter these medicines across different chains, Tezos, whatever. So, and that's actually kind of a thing now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was also a storytelling, it had lore, which is also something that I think we're starting to see more of. So it was a lot of fun to work on, but we chose Solana because it was, at the time, there was a lot of excitement. It was cheap. Ethereum gas fees were really rough. And we were planning on going on Ethereum after Solana. But like I said, the market crashed. So it wasn't like which one, it was like which one next. You know what I mean? And in Bitcoin, obviously, I was like, well, maybe we'll use Counterparty. That could be interesting. But I think, to be honest, Tezos was ahead of even Counterparty. Even though I'm a Bitcoin guy, I was trying to do what was best for the project and the community, and also Meredith was my partner, so she had her own input. And we went back and forth, but we ended up doing Solana as a second blockchain. This felt like a good decision at the time. This is 2021. So, but I had my eye on Bitcoin. I was like, that's why I was poking around, like, oh man, nothing's changed. I'm still using Imager. What the fuck, man? You guys are using Imager and Counterparty. This is not the way. Like, Arweave is a thing, IPFS is a thing. So that kind of frustrated me. I used to like poke fun in the Discord and Telegram, like, you guys are using.
Sometimes the mentality never changes until there's an incentive for it to change, right? Taproot had existed for 2 years and nobody used it, and now one person found a way to leverage it, and now the entire space wants to use it. Do you think
we did use Arweave though? I mean, all of the art is on Arweave, even though we deployed it on Solana. So say what you want about Arweave. It's it's a purposeful network for storing files. It's decentralized, not very decentralized, but it's decentralized.
Yeah, the big critic I see of that is that it's some sort of like propulsion machine by the token, right? Kind of like a Luna. The faster it goes up, the faster it goes down. It's pegged to its its usage is pegged to its token. That kind of happened with Sia Coin and a lot of these other kind of ideas as well. But do you think a multi-chain future is inevitable at this point? Does it feel like there's not going to be, or maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of capture a lot of their specific audience for smart contracts and purity and decentralization for Bitcoin? But do you think more projects are going to begin to expand and live on multiple chains, cultures living in synchronicity across chains, or maybe tools, right? Like Emblem Vault, we exist on 3 different chains currently. So it seems like the remnants are there. Of course, the token ecosystem is still not mature at all in any sense, but it's getting there. When you think about or speculate maybe into the next like 5 years, like what do you think, where do you think crypto is?
I mean, that's tough question to answer because yeah, I think there's always gonna, well, we'll see. I mean, there's lots of legal issues coming down the pipe, but I, in theory, there's always going to be a lot of chains. I mean, everybody wants their own phenomena. They want to repeat Bitcoin's phenomena of like this this coin that's like worth so much money. It's the chain, you know, and they've been trying for years and years and years, which is good. It's innovation, but it's also frustrating that there isn't more consolidation to just get everyone's heads to do the one. You know, let's create the network, whether it involves layer twos and side chains or not. Like, so I would like to see a less scattered, you know, networks that are overlapping in things and competing. I'd like to see more cooperation. But yeah, there's always going to be multiple chains. I think we'll see a consolidation to mostly Bitcoin and some interesting layer twos around it, focused around it. Ethereum's not going away. You know, maybe a couple others will be like, I think there'll be like a top five-ish that will be like relevant, and then lots of irrelevant or like a new wave of side chains actually. I was actually big into the side chains idea early on.
Like rootstock kind of thing?
Mostly Blockstream stuff. Adam Back, when I listened to him in 2014 talking about side chains, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a good thing for Bitcoin. You know, because Bitcoin doesn't really scale, you know. So but the narrative right now with ordinals and on-chain data is, I mean, I'm with it to an extent, but it is just a narrative. And I do like to point out to people that, look, you know, with the whole pruning thing, until we have some empirical data, the idea is great that it's permanent forever, but it would be nice to know just how decentralized the inscriptions are, not Bitcoin as a whole, but nodes with inscriptions versus IPFS. Like, you know, maybe IPFS is more decentralized for a while. If you were to put a file on IPFS and then people say, well, that's an, you know, Amazon server. Well, you know, Bitcoin nodes don't all run on people's local computers. There's lots of nodes that are running on Amazon and whatnot. So I'm curious to see how decentralized the inscription content is. How many nodes are keeping it? They're not really incentivized to keep it unless they are really, you know, behind the idea of it. Miners love it; they get paid, but after they get paid, whether or not they're running archival nodes or not, like the incentive to keep those files forever disappears right after that transaction, right after they get paid. It's just they're just getting paid to make the transaction valid. You know, now how do we incentivize all these nodes to store all this data? I mean, that's another topic, but yeah, multi-chains, but not too many. I'm a Bitcoiner all the way, so I like to see what's happening here, and you know, it's expensive. I kind of got priced out waiting for the parent-child collection stuff. I wanted to do the medicine project correctly as a collection, and then since I waited on that, I mean, I didn't really care about the whole inscription number thing, so I was like, I'm fine waiting. We're already past a million anyways. Who cares, you know?
And then
So
BRC20 came and just destroyed everything.
yeah, I went down that rabbit hole just the other day. Actually, it was totally degening.
Gotta love it. Never fails. One final topic is this idea of VSATs, or what is it, sats per VByte, and what happens next. As you mentioned, you waited, and now the gas fees are insane, right? Something that maybe cost $10 to put on chain in January is now probably like $300 to put on chain. Is the next move for the Bitcoin ecosystem L2s? Is it side chains? Is it just migrating to other chains to kind of help persist with that? Does the miner fees just keep increasing and piss off the maxis because now their El Salvador project is ruined because no one's going to pay $20 for a for gas fees to go, you know, pay for groceries? Where is this all headed?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the consensus is that fees will continue to go up. I mean, it's going to be up and down. You know, as more people kind of get priced out, there'll be less transactions. The fees will come down, but then they'll go up when stats taken advantage of. Like, oh, they went down, so let's push some content. So it'll be like a little bit of a yo-yo seesaw type thing. But ultimately, the trend will be upwards. There's no getting around that. So being on chain now on Bitcoin, it's scarce and valuable space. Um, yeah, like there will be other networks. I do think that a side chain that is purposeful for storage, and again, like I'm not a huge IPFS guy, but like it is there for that reason. And you don't have to use a token with the Filecoin stuff. Like, so I even tweeted earlier today, like it would be cool to see ordinal friendly nodes also running an IPFS node. So they're storing the inscriptions and they're also putting in an IPFS, spreading it out even more. But again, they need to be incentivized for that. And maybe there could be a shift where you have an option. Do you want to go on chain, on Bitcoin chain for this data, or do you want to, like, skirt over to these nodes that have IPFS and just do that for much cheaper, so you have some options. So we'll see. But I mean, right now for artists, it's a real struggle. There's a lot of interest in ordinals and maybe some shell shock with how much, I can't get my photograph, I can't get my high res art. So we may have to look at things like the whole lazy mint thing on Ethereum, but like for ordinals. So I'm trying something where I'm going to try to sell BRC tokens, so the artist could literally just put the token, like the JSON, which is cheap, see if there's interest, if they're even exposing the art. It could be a reveal afterwards, but if there's interest in the art, then buy the token, and then that will pay for the inscription, and then that inscription will be sent to the owner of the token. Kind of simple. It kind of helps artists like skirt the upfront costs. So that's one idea. I'm toying around with that right now. But yeah, fees are going to go up and up.
Up and away. Yeah, I think one of the ideas that you're speaking on is this idea of like the generative BRC 721 I've seen, where it's like you're minting the traits as a JSON file, and then when people buy it, and then it can construct the image through a specific type of front end that kind of displays it, and it cuts down on the block space by like 50 to 90%. Again, a lot of that's above my head a little bit. Sounds cool in theory, but in practicality, it's much, much harder. Sull, appreciate you for coming on, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, understanding the history. Again, right? You're ahead of the times, and now you're with the times.
I don't know. I think I'm still behind. Every day I feel a little behind. I can't keep up.
Every day we wake up, there's a new BRC standard. There's something new with ordinals happening. It's getting crushed. It's getting implemented somewhere else. Gotta love this space. I haven't been this bullish on technology since the NFTs 2 years ago. So exciting times and exciting conversations. So appreciate you for sharing your time and your alpha. And I look forward to following all of your projects and experiments here in the near future.
Keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening, watching. We'll catch you next time.